Two stories behind me. Three stories, really. I'll start off by the first story.
Can I kiss you?
Please go ahead and hook me on up.
Do something with that thing.
You all have caused me more trouble than the whole rest of the talks all put together. I've talked to men, I've talked to crooks, I've talked to prime ministers and senators, and I've talked to a lot of people. But what in the dickens do you talk to teens and young'uns about? Then I started thinking, goodness gracious, Dick Hoskins, you know, once upon a time you used to be a teenager, and so by George, I'm just going to talk to you about my life as it sort of came along, and as things unraveled for me. First of all, this hat. I'll tell you the first reason I wear a hat. When I was your age, I was one of these tough guys, see? And back in Virginia, where I'm from, we've got these mountains. Not as big as these are, but they're right big mountains. And I prided myself on being a big hunter. I think I was 17. I went way back up in the mountains. I mean, you go 8, 10 miles, and you can't see a house. There's nobody back up in the mountains. It's way back there, and you're back on these forest trails. And I got way up there, and there was no water. It was a hot July day. Lord, it was hot. Being a tough boy, I didn't wear a hat, you see. And the sun was beating down on my head. I had a pack roll. Virginia, when we go soldiering, go up in the mountains, we wear a roll. It's a blanket. You carry food supplies in a blanket, roll it up, and attach it here. And you put your rifle on your shoulder, and you got your knife in your belt, and off you go. And you can stay out a right long time, just that way. You don't need much more, as long as you got an extra pair of dry socks. Now, it got hot, like I said. The higher I went, the hotter it got. And I used up my water. And that night, something went wrong. That night, I was way up there on top of the mountain, and I was burning up with a fever, and I couldn't get in the water. And I rolled and tossed until sunlight came. When sunlight came, it was this, I wasn't sure where I was because I'd never been this way before. I thought it was as far this way as it was to go back, so I figured I'd go ahead and go on over the mountain. Well, I made a mistake there because it just gets worse as you go along. I continued on back into the mountain, and then it hit me. And boy, I could hear water way down there. You know, way down at the bottom. If I ever got down to one of those places, I'd never gotten up. I knew that. And it hit me, and boy, I rolled out in the road. I don't know how long I lay there. And I finally came to myself, and it's sort of like a dream. I got off the mountain on the other side, all the way to the bottom, and it had a stream. And I remember I lay in that stream, just laying it, that cold mountain stream, drinking the water. It was nauseated and sick, and I couldn't move, and I couldn't get up. And I'll tell you, nobody had been on that road a long time because the grass was growing in it. And I didn't know what I was going to do because I couldn't walk very far. I had sunstroke, heat stroke or something, for not taking care of myself. And I heard something, sweetest music I ever heard. It was a pulp truck bringing trees off the mountain. And I waved the fellow down and said, "Could I get a ride off?" I said, "I'm mighty sick." And he said, "Sure, climb up." So I went up on the top of that load, and they carried me out 20-odd miles to Big Island, up on the James River, and I called home. It took me a long time to get over that sunstroke, a long time. And I had trouble. I've had trouble with it ever since. I wear a hat for that reason, even here. It doesn't bother you, but it might bother Dick Hoskins, and I'm not going to take another chance on that. Now, the second reason, and this is the most important reason. A gentleman wears a hat for one reason. When you're walking down the street, and a pretty young maid comes down the street, and you sit and you say, "Good morning, ma'am." She'll always look at you and she'll smile. And she wouldn't give you the time of day if you didn't tip your hat and say, good morning, man. And so I know every pretty young maid in Lynchburg, Virginia, and half of them in Richmond, Virginia. Now, you young bucks, remember that. If you want to get along with the fair sex, and that goes double with the older ones, if you wear a hat and will tip it to the older ladies, they like the stuffings out of the gesture. And I'm very serious indeed. And that's why half the people in Virginia wear the hats. I happen to be one of them. All right, now, we want to get down to some real brass tacks. I've got just a few minutes with you this morning. I'm going to cover as much ground as I possibly can. What I'm going to talk to you about is extremely important. It is extremely doubtful if anyone else will ever tell you what I'm going to tell you this morning. If you got questions, please ask. Hold me up until you understand. Now, I'm going to read just a little bit here in my book about usury. Now, the reason I use my book is I got the place marked. Otherwise, and I got everything out of the Bible I'm getting ready to read you. So don't think that this is the Bible. It's not. It's just my book. Oh, good Lord. Is that mine?
Yeah.
Oh, please don't let him get away. I'll be dead. Thank you. Would you just hold on to him? Thank you. I don't know where. I'll drop that. All right. Thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother, usury of money, usury of victuals, food, usury of anything that is lent upon usury. In the old days, to get around that, they said, hey, if you charge 5 cents, that's bad. But if you charge just 2%, that's all right. Any interest at all is bad, unless you're lending it to a zwer, a racial alien, and then it is permissible under law. You don't even lend it to a racial alien, that usually, in my opinion, if it's going to ruin it. But you're allowed to do it. So, rather than take your money and stick it in a sock under the bed, you might put it in a Jew bank, if you trust them, and don't think they're going to close up on you, and you don't think that you're going to lose all your money. It would be better to put it in a treasury bill or a government money market fund on which you can write checks. The government of the United States, now America is my country, I'll die for it. The government is not my country, and I'm not going to die for them. They borrow from the usury bank. The borrower is servant to the lender. The government of the United States is servant to the usury banks. The usury banks are in the hands of the zwer, the racial alien. Therefore, our government of the United States is a servant of them. You can take usury from your government. You are sons of your fathers. You got the same genes they got. You are flesh of their flesh and bone of their bone. You got the same brains in your head that they got. You are every bit as smart as your mothers and fathers. From 12 years on, your parents, you can reason as good as your parents. You can think things through probably faster. But they got one thing you haven't got. They got experience. I'm 57 years old, and I wouldn't trade one of my years to go back to any year before. I'm not as strong as I was at 21, and God knows I'm not as tough as I was. And people can run over me today, but I got something I didn't have then, and that's knowledge. And knowledge is 2 to 1 over youth any day of the week. Your parents have been there. They've got more experience than you have by far, and you will not have that experience until you reach their age. Now, you might have technical knowledge that you learned in school, or something that you read in a book that's far superior to what they know. And if you get that technical knowledge and run over your daddy and your mother with your technical knowledge, well, I learned in college how to farm, and we don't farm that way anymore. What we do is this and that and the other. And now they're finding out that what they've been teaching for the last 15 years is a bunch of garbage. That they've ruined the land, and it won't produce anything without a certain type of fertilizer. The old-timers knew that, but the young bucks coming out, they had all the answers because of the technical knowledge they got in college. The technical knowledge will not equal the experience of your fathers. Your fathers and your mothers may not be as educated as you. They might have not gone to, may not have gone to school and gotten the fancy words and can put it all together. But they've got the practical knowledge that comes with living. Children, obey your parents as the Lord. Obey your parents. Now, when does that stop? When does obedience stop? When you're 18? When do you girls quit obeying your parents? When you're 21? When you move off, get a job? Young men, when you get married, you move out of your house if at all possible. You set up your own house someplace. Women, that's different. I want to speak on this subject in just a minute. But if at all possible, men, you will not be your own man until you're under your own roof. Have your own family set up. And the day will never come when you will not give proper respect to your father's knowledge. The day will never come until you reach his age. And by that time, he'll be older or he'll be dead, and he'll have more knowledge. It never stops. It never stops. It's so very important that the youngsters, particularly the young, very young, be kept in contact with the very old. The very young will grow up much faster, much faster. The teenagers today are not nearly as old as the teenagers were when I was growing up. I had my grandparents with me, and they told me this and they told me that. And now, very old great uncles and great aunts told me to do this and to do that. And they had time. They had time to talk to me. And I asked them questions I never could ask Mother and Daddy. Owes no man anything but love. Why? The borrower is servant to the lender. Don't go on anyone else's note. Not even your own kid's note. When you get married and your boy wants to buy a car or a house and the bank says, hey, the boy won't listen to you and he's going to borrow at interest, and the bank says, hey, get your daddy to sign it or your mother to sign the note. Don't sign any of those notes, ever. I know where I speak. My granddaddy, Dick Kelly, lived in Culpeper. And this was after the war. He was born in 68. And he was born in 66. And times were hard after the war. Very hard. Things got progressively worse and worse and worse as they went into the peace phase. It didn't bottom until 1896. And things were a real struggle. His best friend in Culpeper, Virginia, wanted to buy a hotel. Hotel that Robert E. Lee stayed at, or Grant stayed at. It was the only hotel in town. All the greats stayed there. Oh, it was a fine hotel. Everybody had to stay there. Anybody could. It's a proposition you couldn't lose. except for one thing. Money disappeared. And I don't care how good a proposition it is, if there's no money in circulation and you can't get hold of any money and nobody's got any money to spend, they're not going to spend it with you. And he had a note at the bank. But he went to Granddaddy and said, hey, this can't lose, and please be a good guy and go on a note for me, so they let me have a loan. Granddaddy was a good fellow. He was a good guy. And he went on the note. And he couldn't make it. Guess who ended up having to pay the note? Granddaddy. And it like to ruin him for 15 years. The family had to live on practically nothing, while every cent my Granddaddy made in selling sewing machines, farming, selling land, doing anything he could. Everything went to the bank. You see, the deeper you get into the peace phase, the bigger the loan is, the bigger the payments when there's no money around. $50 a month doesn't sound like much now, but if you have no money at all, $50 a month is an impossible amount. That's what happens during these periods of time. Finally, Granddaddy paid the bank off. He lucked out. He lucked out. And that was the cornerstone of his fortune. He took the hotel building, he set up 2 or 3 stores in it, and he did well. But for that 15 years, the family went through an awful stage by going on someone else's note. Now, Tom Jefferson lives right up, well, he lived right up the road from where I lived. When Pete came to visit up there in Lynchburg, I took him by his house there. Tom Jefferson got 2 homes. One is Monticello, up there in Charlottesville. His other is Poplar Grove, right just a few miles outside of town. I know the fellow who owns it. He left the key under the mat, so I had a chance to take him through it. It's a real pretty place. Now, I'm going to read what the Bible says about it right now. This is Proverbs 6:1-2. If thou be surety means going on somebody else's note. If thou be surety for thy friend, thou art snared. That means caught, grabbed. You had it, Buster. If you go on somebody else's note, they got you. Number 2. Now, this is important in 2 ways. He that is surety, now I looked that word surety up, and it means a little something different this time. It means barter, to intermix, to mortgage, to have anything to do with a stranger. Now look that word up too, in Strong's Concordance. Now I hope you look these things up after I'm through talking with you. Don't you believe Dick Hoskins? You look these things up. Each of you are supposed to be a priest. Dick Hoskins is supposed to be one, but you are too. And Dick Hoskins is no better priest than you are. And if you take my word on a face value, you take anybody's word on face value, and you'll end up in all sorts of trouble because there are lies galore out here, and they'll tell you anything. So you look it up. Stranger, zwir, racial alien. He that is surety for a zwir, stranger, shall smart for it. Smart for it. When you smack somebody up against the side of the face with the back of your hand, it's smart. You'll smart for it. If you have dealings with them, you're going to smart for it. If you associate with them, you're going to smart for it. Stay away from the zwir strangers, much less having surety dealings with them. Stay away from them. If you make things comfortable and nice, they're going to stay around you. If you make things uncomfortable, they'll go away and leave you alone. Don't have anything to do with it. Now, Tom Jefferson. All right, mighty Tom wrote that Declaration of Independence. The one that everybody talks about as being a God that nothing could go wrong with. Well, that's right about a whole lot of things, but a lot of things Tom Jefferson did, I disagree with. You got to judge what a man does on the law, and that goes for everybody, whether it's a criminal in a jail to the President of the United States. No one is above the law. No one. All right? This comes from a book that I've been reading on Tom Jefferson. 4 years later, disaster struck. This is after he was president. And Jefferson found himself obligated to pay $20,000. Now, $20,000? What was $20,000 then? Well, his plantation, Poplar Grove was, Poplar Forest, Poplar Forest had 4,000 acres, and he called it one of the finest homes in the state of Virginia. He valued the whole thing at $6,000. Okay, he owed $20,000. Now, how did Tom get on a hook for $20,000, which he could ill afford, to the creditors of William Perry Nicholas, whose note he had signed? He went on a buddy's note. He went on a friend's note. You don't go on anybody's note. Your mother's note, your daddy's note, your kid's note, your best friend's note, or anybody. You don't go on anybody's note. You're not surety for anyone. It's the law. Now, we're not a religious group. We got nothing to do with religion. I dare say there are all different church denominations here. We are a people who go by a set of rules set down by God Almighty. And that's the only thing that holds us together. And that is the thing that will hold us together. The law, or the violations thereof, will separate us, and they'll separate us real fast. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to take you back just real fast and go through some things. I'll have to put you through school. I didn't want to do that, because I know this is vacation for you. Will you open this up, son, and give me a hand, please, sir? And you got 3 groups of papers, and if you don't, are not carefully going all over the countryside. All right, give me the first. And I'm sorry, I really didn't expect this many here, so divide this up as far as it'll go. I'll hold that until you get back. Just pass the bird and let them pass them around. Okay, just stick them over your shoulder. Not one, just one for every 4 or 5. Stick them back over this way. Pass them back over this way. A whole bunch of them need them over this. One for every 4 or 5. Would you stand up, son, and supervise it? One for every 4 or 5 people. Okay, those of you who don't get it, tough. Those of you who do get it, try to explain it to them. Now, I want you to keep those things. Understand what I'm getting ready to tell you. Now, this is called compound interest. This is an interest table that I'm just showing you right now. And I'm doing it simple. $10,000 for 10% for 10 years. Now, when I was your age, I could have cared less about this. And I really wouldn't have appreciated it if some meathead with a hat on from Virginia got up in front of me and said, hey, look at this piece of paper. Because it really didn't concern me when I was your age. But I wish somebody had grabbed me by the hair and beat my head up against a tree like that and said, boy, pay attention. I want to show you something. See? Now, this is compound interest, and this is how it works. 10% interest is not very much. If you don't believe it, talk to any banker. They'll tell you. Now, at the end of the first year, if you don't pay anything back, you borrow money for 10 years, you don't pay them anything. At the end of 10 years, you got to pay interest and principal back. The principal is the $10,000 you borrowed, and now you got to pay the interest. The first year, you owe $11,000. The second year, you owe $12,100. The third year, you owe $13,310. The next year, the fourth year, it's $14,600. The next year, is $16,105. The next year is $17,700. The next year is $19,004. The next year is $21,000. The next year is $23,000, $25,000, $28,000, $31,000, $34,000, $37,000, and $41,000. At the end of 10 years, you borrowed $10,000, and you're going to pay back $41,772.48, or they're going to take it out of your hide and wring you out. Every drop of blood's going to come out of your body, and you're going to pay. Or wish you were dead. And they'll take your car and your house and your business and everything you got. Now, that's compound interest. And there's any number of thousands of people out here that are on these balloon notes that they don't owe anything on until they come due. That's your balloon. The fancy balloon. My payments are real low. I don't have many payments. I don't have to pay anything for 10 years. And then how much you got to pay? Well, I don't know, but it couldn't be too much because I only pay 10%. You hear me? That is your balloon $10,000 note. Okay. We'll have to worry you to death again, son. Okay, put half of them here and half of them over yonder and let them pass them over the shoulders. Oh, give, the Lord said, give me one.
Oh, yeah.
Let me have one. Oh, I got one. As you were. Thank you. Now, please understand, did all of you understand that first compound interest thing? Sir?
Is that different than simple interest?
It's a whole lot different than simple interest. I don't even want to get into simple interest because it's so simple that, you know, that you're never going to hear about it. And besides, you're not supposed to be dealing in any of this stuff. But these are the type of things they're going to throw at you by your friendly banker. Your Fidelity, what are they all called, you know? Loyal, Fidelity, some kind of good bank. Now here is another thing. It's called the Mortgage Amortization Program. That's a big fancy name for paying it off. See? How much you got to pay off each month? Amortization. Okay, we're going to amortize this thing. We got $10,000, 10 years, for 15 years. See, most houses are financed 15 years. And the rate of interest, 10%. Now, I put all this stuff came off my computer. Boy, they're real neat things. You ought to get, the first chance you have, get yourself a computer and run these programs through. It blow your mind. Make you want to take up a lot, hit somebody in the head with it. It says the payment principal is $24.13 a month, see? That's no big deal, see? Anybody can pay $24.13 a month for 15 years. All right. Look at the top. This first top line, the first payment, you pay $24.13. And excuse me, I am so very sorry. You pay a total of $107.46. That's your monthly payments. Out of that $107.46, $24.13 goes against the principal. That's the $10,000 you borrowed. And $83.33 goes against the interest. It takes a long, long time to pay your note off, paying $24.13 for the principal, and for the bank to stick in their pocket as profit, $83.33, see? Or $83.33. So they're making big money. Most mortgages don't last more than 5 or 6 years. So they rake off the biggest part in the first 5 or 6 years. So their profits are absolutely enormous, the profits they make on this. Now, if everybody here had a computer, we could have a whole lot of fun. But I don't want to have too much fun right now because I want to get through with this thing and let you see it. The last part, that's the top table. The last table, that's the bottom part. Just a second, I want to go over there. The last table, you'll notice it says the payments, one's on the left-hand side, payment of 169 through 180. 169 through 180, that's when the thing is almost paid off. You'll notice that most of the payments in the last part of a loan go against principal and very little against interest. But that really doesn't make much difference. This is a trick, by the way. It's a trick. And I'm going to show you how the trick works. Okay, now. Okay. Half in, half out. Okay, has everyone, has it been paid? Well, almost. Okay, now this is what we call a 15-year mortgage loan account. Can y'all hear me? A 15-year mortgage loan account. Now this is a real neat little sheet. You might want to play games with it. What are the payments if you have a $10,000 loan at 10%? It's $107.46. Upper left-hand corner, you see? Okay, suppose you borrow $26,000 at 13.5%. Look at the lower right-hand corner, see? It's $337.56. So you can figure out what your payments are going to be just by looking at this sheet. So you might want to kind of keep it around to see what rates are. It'll help you in your business. All right, now, this is the way these birds do it. You see that little square I drew with a pencil at the bottom when I had 5 minutes before the plane took off and I had to run this thing off real fast? Well, it says at the bottom 0 years and the top $10,000. And over at the lower right-hand corner it says 15 years. And it's got this crazy line running right through the middle of it. It's saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so forth, all the way down to 15, right? All right. When you make a payment of, let's say, $107.56 each month for 15 years, you have paid off your note. But actually, what has happened is that each month you paid down your principal. In other words, you really don't owe $10,000. You only owe $10,000 less the amount that you're paying. If you start owing $10,000 and you end up owing nothing, what has been your average amount that you've owed through 10 years? You've owed half that. So actually the bank has really only lent you $7,500 for this period of 15 years. And on that $75, let's see what's happened. You have paid $107.46 a month times 12 months in a year equals $1,248.52 a year. And you've done that every year for 15 years. Okay, 1 year's total payment of $1,289.52 times 15 years equals to $19,342.80 is the total amount that you paid in. For the use of $7,500, not for $15,000. You see, these are little games they play with you. I want you to know the games they play. I don't want you involved in their games. Oh, no man, anything but love. Figure out how long it would take you to save up $15,000 at, $110.46 a month. How much? $15,000 divided by $107 equals to 140 payments. 140 payments, well, that's far less than the 180 payments that they're asking. You'd be through in 140 payments. In other words, for $12,000, for a whole lot less, you could get that house. Instead of 15 years, in about 12 years, you could have enough money saved to pay it off completely. And that would leave you how much money extra? It would leave you, what? The difference between $19,000 and $15,000. It would leave you $4,342. Now, can't you think of something that you can spend $4,300 on? Or are you so rich you don't need $4,300? Are you these wealthy kids we've been hearing about? Huh? The same thing works with a lousy, stinking car. You can get the doggone car in 2.5 years if you just take the payments and savings, which will leave you $15,000 car. You can get that car. You can get that car instead of paying $19,000 for it. You can get that car for $15,000 and have $4,000 left over to put a fox tail on it. You can put 3 different kinds of horns on it. You can do, oh man, you'll get really dressed up fine. You know, put all that fur on a dash, you know. You can really have that thing all fixed up inside. But you can only do that if you pay it, take the payments, put it in the bank for 2.5 years. Now, I've got a son-in-law, man, he likes those foxtails, and he likes that fur on the thing. He likes the whole works. But I'm going to get into that in just 1 minute. Of course, I dearly love the boy, but good golly, gee. How much time do I have left? I've got 5 minutes. And I've got the most interesting stories to tell you that, but with 5 minutes, what in the world can I tell you in 5 minutes? I'll tell you what I'll tell you. Obedience. I brought my kids up to be obedient to their fathers. And men, move away from your home when you get married. But you girls, you be obedient to your parents until he turns that obedience over to your husband. And then you're obedient to them when he is law-abiding. And if he's not law-abiding, we've got another story coming up here. The law is clear, and it's very simple. My daughter met this young boy, and he was a fine young boy. He went to some of the best schools in the state of Virginia, and he played football and sang in the choir of the church. His father was a deacon, and you can't hardly get much better than that. And he was respectful, and he was nice, and he wanted to marry my daughter. And that was just fine, because I like that boy. I like his looks. I like talking to him. I liked a lot about it. And I said, now, when are y'all planning on getting married? And they said, oh, maybe in 3 or 4 months. I said, 3 or 4 months, huh? I said, now, where exactly, where do you have a job? What about your job? Oh, he says, I'm working in a car wash right now, but I've got some plans about a job. Now, what's the law on that case? Men, establish your businesses before establishing your home. Did you hear that? Men, establish your business before establishing your home. I said, okay, that's fine, except for one little thing. The law says, men, establish your business before establishing your home. And he said, well, we don't believe in that. Yeah. Now, look. I go by the law the very best I know how. My children go by the law the very best they know how. And my daughter will love this boy very much. And I said, well, until you've established your business, I forbid a wedding. And they said they're going to go ahead and get married anyway. Well, at that time, my preacher was Jerry Falwell. And I know Pete doesn't like Jerry very well. I don't like a lot of things Jerry does, but I like Jerry and I like him a whole lot. I went to that church for 18, 19 years until I got good and mad at him. I called Jerry up. I said, Jerry, I got a problem with my daughter. He says, Dick, he says, whatever you do, he says, you're right. He says, don't give in. And boy, it's the easiest thing in the world to give in to make peace in the family. Because I raised 6 kids, each one as hard-nosed as their daddy, see? And they come on just that way. Sometime I'll have to tell you about the stock that came from Virginia. Half of you are descended from that stock. It's an interesting breed. Now, my daughter sent out, I wouldn't send out invitations. She sent out invitations. I would not give my daughter away. She had arranged that her father-in-law was going to give her away. I don't know how she's going to manage that. Fine. She went to 15 or 16 different preachers to get one to support their stand. Couldn't find a preacher. At least on that point, they were correct, see? But they were going to get ready anyway. Get married anyway. And it got so uncomfortable around the house that she went to our best friend to stay. Because my heart was breaking out of the clouds. So I said, all right, Dick, I was going to work. I was going to see her. And I said, to heck with work. I'll give it one last try. I said, God, please put words in my mouth. So I went to see her. And I said, Granville, I said, I'll tell you how she got her name in just a second. I said, Granville, I raised you to be obedient. I mean you the very best. I said, you come back to your dad and put yourself under his authority. And we'll work this thing through until it meets the criteria set down in God's law. And she says, all right, like blew my mind. I got her in a car, took her back home, got her out of town. That young boy wanted to cause trouble, but he came to the right place. And he decided against it because people still remember Dick Hoskins before he got saved. You know, the word still at Lynchburg. That's back in 1965. You know, things don't ever go away. People just remember. All right, she came back. That boy met another girl, and he was married in 2 weeks. He had 2 children by and divorced her. And that might have been my daughter, Granville. And if it wasn't for obedience by my daughter, she'd be in a living hell today. Obedience. Children, obey your parents as the Lord. Now, maybe you don't like Daddy going at supper table, huh? Maybe you don't like the way he handles his knife and his fork. And maybe you don't like his old-fashioned way of saying the same doggone thing 15 times. But let me tell you, he's got one thing that you don't have. Experience. And if you can tap that experience, and if you can become obedient, and he knows that you are obedient, he'll let you do anything in the world he possibly can. He will. I know it. That's the way it is with my kids. Sometimes they come to me with borderline things. You know, if there's any possible way for me to let them do it, I'll let them do it. As long as it does not violate the law. We got a good working relationship. And if you think it's smooth, you're crazy. I've raised kids just like myself. But the law works. And thank goodness you asked me to talk to you, or Pete asked me to talk to you, and thank goodness none of you walked out. And I appreciate that. And I'd like to talk to you again sometime before you leave. Thank you very much. appreciate your help. Anybody got any questions?
Yeah, why did you name a Granville?
Okay, Granville. You know, I keep forgetting this thing. My middle name's Kelly. My great-granddaddy was Granville James Kelly. You know the James boys? They're distant kinsmen. Well, the Queen of England's a cousin too, so don't look down your nose too far. All right. We had 5 plantations at Kelly's Ford. We had the woolen mill, and we produced a lot and did a lot for the Confederacy in the way of producing uniforms. All of our slaves worked on entrenchments and everything. We put as much crop in as we possibly could to feed the Confederate Army. We did everything we could. And they came by and they said, Granville Kelly? He said, yes, sir. He says, we want you to take your hat off and raise your hand. He said, I want you to swear allegiance to the United States. He says, thank you, sir. He says, those thank. I've already sworn allegiance to one government. That's enough. And they took him, threw him in jail. And they put him in jail on bread and water for a year and a half. And he was getting ready to die. And they took him out to Old Point Comfort, right over the Potomac River. And that Old Point prison, 30,000 Confederate prisoners died in that, Confederate Southerners died in that one camp over there. They didn't give us blankets, they didn't give us food, they didn't give us anything. And they threw him out because the records were getting real out of line. I mean, the deaths coming out of that camp were 200 or 300 every day. And they threw him out there so he died, so they could say he wasn't on the record. One of his slaves working by, he worked for the camp, saw him, picked him up, took him home, and fed him back to life. He never did give oath of allegiance to the United States government. And I said, a name like that, by golly, and a man like that, I don't want to ever see that name die, not in this country of us. So my firstborn son, I named him Granville, which turned out to be a girl. So she was named Granville anyway. So that's how my daughter was named Granville. They asked me to have my second daughter was named Georgia Hume. You want to hear that? Yeah. The king of England got ready to invade Scotland. George Hume of Clan Hume raised the clans on the border. He raised 15,000 men, and he came down to the border. His boy George was with him. And they fought a great war against England. And they lost. And all the leaders of Scotland were hanged, drawn, and quartered. How many of y'all know what that is? Okay, the rest of you don't know. Well, let me tell you why feelings run strong in Virginia. To hang them is to hang them up by the neck until they're almost dead, and then you cut them down. And then you throw water in their face. Then you get strong men to hold them out, and you open them up with a knife and take their entrails out, and you burn them before their face, see, while they're still living. Then you grab them by the hair, you put them down, and you chop their head up. Then you get one of the bill hooks. You ever seen a bill hook? And you quarter them. You know what? You quarter beef into 4 pieces. You quarter them. And you take the 4 pieces of the body to the 4 rims. And the head is at the disposal of the king. And he puts it up on a spike over the gate. Where they keep crown jewels in England? What's it called? Tower London? Got a spike up there. That's where my granddaddy's head was supposed to be placed, see? And his boy had a chain. He was a younger. He wasn't any older than y'all when he was fighting. He came down Jamestown with a chain around his neck, see? Like a common thief. The head of Clan Hume. His cousin was the governor. And he sent word up there that he was down there in the jail. And he appreciated if he'd buy his indenture. He was to be sold as a slave, indentured slave. His cousin bought his indenture, see, and gave him a job. His name was George Hume. And I remember these little things. And in Virginia, we remember these little things. And they don't always go away. Therefore, the Queen of England's a cousin, and that's no big deal. Of course, half the people in the state of Virginia are kin to her, and half of you sitting right here are kin to her. If you just check it out. But I know what the Crown and I know what government is capable of doing to its own people. I know they've done it to my family time and time again. Now, I'll give my life for my country, and I won't give 2 cents for that government up in Washington, D.C. Because we've had governments do the same thing to us time and time and time again. As long as they go by the law, as long as they're law-abiding, follow them. If they leave the law, if they become outlaw, then you got a problem, a big problem. And I guess that's one of the reasons we're here today, man, isn't it? That's how my daughter got the name, be named Georgina. I don't mean to be too doggone serious, and I guess it is a laughing matter. But man, oh man, I can't help but take it with a certain amount of seriousness, even after all these years. I guess that's what makes Virginia, Virginia, huh? Sir. What I name Good, y'all. I named one of my boys John Hunley, on account of I got a father that I thought the world and all of, John Hunley. And it doesn't mean anything to you all, but down in Tidewater, Virginia, in King Queen County, the Hunley name means something. And my other boy, Robert Byrd, well, in the 1st Virginia Continental Line that went over the top down at Yorktown, had a young subaltern in there, a young lieutenant, and his name was Robert Byrd, huh? 1st Virginia Continental Line. That later that was Patrick Henry's outfit. He was, Tom Jefferson. Patrick Henry was one of our first commanders. And then my grandfather, that's the 1st Virginia Regiment. Then my grandfather served in that regiment, all the way, including Gettysburg, the whole works. He served in that regiment, and I served in it. It's called the Richmond Light Infantry Blues, the oldest military organization in the United States. And Robert Byrd, that's his name. That's how my name is. He's my youngest. He's a crackerjack. He's 13 years old, and he can take a .45 pistol, and I declare he can nail nails at that thing as far away as that boy sitting right there. He's real good with it. He's real good with it. I'm pleased with all my children. I really am. I tell you the truth. Well, I just kind of wish that things had worked out that maybe y'all could have been my kids. Because I think you'd have had a good time. I'd taken you around Virginia. I showed you some real interesting places. I introduced you to people you wouldn't believe. People who live in cabins up on the side of the mountain and make moonshine. I can show you some darkies who know things that you wouldn't dream of. I know some people walking the side of the road, an old slouch hat and a patch nippers and the bottom of his breeches, a multi-millionaire. I know some real interesting people across this country. And Virginia is interesting. This is a nice country and everything. Virginia's way all that. Thank you again. Oh, any other questions?